Good evening. This is the Board of Education meeting for which adequate notice under the Open Public Meetings Act was provided by written notice on January 3rd, 2019. To the Courier News, the Echo Sentinel, the Star Ledger, Tappan to Warren, and the clerks of the Borough of Watchung and the townships of Greenbrook, Long Hill, and Warren. Can we have a roll call, Mr. Stiles?
Ms. Barone, Ms. Fahey, Mr. Hayek.
Here.
Mr. Hunsinger.
Here.
Mr. Martins.
Here.
Mr. Morrison.
Here.
Knew you were here.
I was back on the earlier, I was still processing the Fahey comments.
Mrs. Ober.
Here.
Dr. Shabilsky.
Here.
And Mr. Fallon.
Here. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, I'll entertain a motion in accordance with the provisions of the New Jersey Open Public Meetings Act. Be it hereby resolved that the board move into executive session to discuss confidential personnel and legal matters, the CSA contract, and the WHREA negotiations update, after which action will be taken. It is expected that the matters discussed in executive session will be made public as soon as the need for confidentiality no longer exists.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, back, finally. Board correspondence, there is in your packets, another politician, Senator Kane, has responded to our resolution regarding pilots, and that's in your packets, and we can provide copies to the public if needed. Ms. Jewett, or Dr. Jewett, excuse me, superintendent's comments.
So we have had, maybe if you want to pull hers over too. So I don't have too much to say other than we've had a fantastic opening of school. We had teachers in the last week of August, and we had a great 2 days with them of a lot of professional development that was significantly, for the most part, led by our own staff members, by our own teachers, facilitating professional development sessions for their colleagues. And then we had the students last week. They came on the Tuesday after Labor Day. And the feedback that I've received from a couple of freshman parents, just anecdotal feedback about how their freshmen felt very welcomed in the school, and how they have really been, that first week, that they actually met a lot of new students and made a lot of friends from, that came from the 3 other districts that they were not from. And they just felt it was a very welcoming environment. And one parent actually told me that their child went home and told them at dinner that night about the affirmations that they do in health class and what an impact that made on them. So it was just really nice to get that feedback about the positive freshman experience coming to the high school, because it is certainly a transition for them. And considering that's something that we put at the forefront of the strategic plan, and that, this, I think, is certainly anecdotal evidence that we've made progress with regard to that. But it's really been a great, very energetic opening to school. And that's all I have.
Okay, we don't have our student representatives here tonight, but I did speak with the football coach, who was very happy and excited both for the boys on the football team with their 27-0 victory last night, and was extremely happy with the support of the students and fans and faculty and staff who were at that game, and said kept up a tremendous energy and stayed throughout the game. And on behalf of the football team, he was very appreciative, and it's also nice to get off to a different start than most of our football seasons get off to. Some of us had a tour earlier today, and our women's volleyball team also won a game today, so we're starting in a good direction for our students. I had the privilege of addressing the new teachers during teacher orientation, and we've got a good crowd of very energetic people who are, excited to be working here. I told them that in my years on the board, what really makes this a really good school is the tremendous dedication of our staff, our teaching staff, and the way they are so invested in our students and that I'm hopeful that these new teachers will grow into that same dedication and investment, dedication to our students and investment in our students as our existing staff has. Mr. Stiles?
Thank you,
Business Administrator's comments?
Thank you, Mr. President. I have two adjustments for the agenda for the board and the public. Item number C8, that is the interim principal. We're going to change that start date from October 7th to September 30th. And item D1, which is the bill list, your bill list.
Yes.
It was missing one check. We had to put that in. It's a check number 388 for $1,950. It's startup funds for the cafeteria account. And that just missed the bill list, but on our final version, it is in there.
Did you say September 3rd?
September 30th, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I thought I heard the same.
Okay, anything else? Mr. Stiles?
That is it. Thank you.
Okay. Committee reports, education.
All right, the Education Committee met on September 5th at 4 p.m. in the afternoon. A couple of highlights of things that we covered. There was a request for Watchung Hills to host the Central Jersey Music Educators Association, their regional performances, which for the past several years have either been down at West Windsor or in Montgomery. The event would be running for 3 days in January, on January 10, 11, 12, here at the high school. The event would be minimal cost to the district other than dealing with security and maintenance and the PAC workers. And the net result of the committee conversation was that we recommend to the board that we approve paying for a cost share up to $1,500 to allow for the hosting of the event for the Central Jersey Music Educators, which, by the way, we have about, in the most recent years, between 15 and 20 of our own students are actually participating in those two ensembles. Second item that we talked about was new and revised curriculum that will be coming forward for approval at the next board meeting. It was curriculum that was written over the summer or revised, and that's now available for your viewing. We decided that there was some suggestion that we talk about it, or that we have it approved on the agenda here. The committee felt strongly that the board should have enough time to actually go in and review all the different curricula that's being proposed, both those that are being revised and those that are new. A lot of interesting courses that were shared, and I won't bog you down with that discussion tonight, but you can certainly see the curriculum online. And then if you have any questions about that, certainly feel free to bring it to the committee or bring it to the superintendent, and we can address it prior to the board meeting in October. We talk about the research across the curriculum project that they've been working on. The issue has been that we've been getting feedback from some of our students that they're great at writing 5-page reports, and then as soon as you get longer than 5 pages, that it's been a struggle for them. So one of the things that they're working on with research across the curriculum is to allow students to work across content areas, but to work over a period to develop a research question, write a draft of a paper, then develop a full-on paper with the appropriate citations to help them with those schools. So they're looking to integrate, that along with more scientific writing into the science curriculum. So right now they plan on coordinating that with English and social studies research papers, and they're making sure that these are all assigned on separate semesters so that you don't have students working on 2 or 3 papers at the same time. So again, staggering the workload for that. Summer enrichment program has tripled since we started doing this. And the committee was asked to consider creating a small stipend for a faculty member who would basically act as an overseeing the summer program. So that's certainly something that we were supportive of. And then we talked about the credit recovery, the efforts that we put in place to make sure that students who may be in danger of not graduating on time have enough time and enough various opportunities to ensure that they can graduate on time. During the summer of 2018, 30% of students that had failed graduation requirements had recovered them in 2018 using EduSeer. And this past summer, 70% of those students were able to complete that. So we're seeing a significant shift in the use of EduSeer for those students to be able to get the credit recovery. And again, the goal here is to make sure that every student gets out of here on schedule, and those students that we have an early warning sign or early warning system in place to make sure that those students that may be edging toward not being able to graduate on time, that we do everything that we can so that they get all the credits that they need. The last item that we touched on was the October 15th board presentation. That's when we annually do the report on student performance data, as well as we get the goals from each of the department heads and hear a variety of the different metrics that the district had achieved from the prior year. We talked about potentially changing the format, but felt that the board enjoyed hearing from all of the departments, so we decided that we would suggest keeping the same format, and as we've used in prior years. So that's the plan moving forward. And then we will be looking at the New Jersey Student Learning Assessment scores at our next Education Committee meeting, and get somewhat of a brief summary of the presentation that we'll be seeing on the 15th. So that's the Education Committee report.
Thank you, Bob. Questions for Bob?
Anyone that was there, did I leave anything out?
I don't think so.
Okay, questions?
Personnel, who's going to?
We had a Personnel Committee meeting on September 4th at 5:30 p.m. with full committee participation. We previewed the C items that are in your board agenda packet this evening. We also discussed the possibility of a part-time security person who would also do residency investigations with cost sharing on Saturdays with the Murray Hill Chinese School possibly. And the board members requested that we look into the possibility of cost sharing with sending districts for the residency investigations. But otherwise, the committee supported the recommendation to post that vacancy. At the last board meeting, there was a question regarding regional high school administrative structure with the suggestion of looking at regional high schools that are one building on the taxpayers guide. So I did look into that. There were, of the 43 school districts, about 21 that are one building, and 3 of them have a shared superintendent principal position, but they're much smaller than us, so several hundred students. The one that came closest to us was 1,300 students, where we have about 2,000 students. But largely, the buildings have a principal and have a superintendent. And the full list is in the Personnel Committee shared folder, if anybody would like to see it. And update on vacancies, which again are reflected in the packet. The postings for Director of Guidance, Director of IT are active, and there's on the agenda tonight an interim principal on for appointment, as Mr. Stiles mentioned. Any questions?
Questions? Okay. Operations, Tim, are you going to do that?
I can if you wish.
I'm happy to do it.
Then thank you, Greg. I'm sorry.
I won't take the slide. So we met 1 hour and 49 minutes ago, so I assume that this is being presented because this is our only board meeting for the month, number 1, and number 2. 2 of the items we're voting on today, D3 and D4, were part of what we discussed today. So D3 and D4 are RFP results on grand piano purchase, of which there were 2 bids. There was a request for an independent reviewer at a very small cost to compare the 2, both of which came within what we were looking for, which facilitated our choice. And with the tennis court, there was only a single bid, but it was within, again, our parameters. And so our committee's recommendation is to vote in favor of both D3 and D4. We also had a discussion about strategic plan consultants. after looking at the bids and observing that compared to the last time we did something similar, that the cost was up by about 30%, that it would be, yes, that it would be prudent to revise the bid to something that would be more akin to the information that we're looking for, and so that will be sent out again.
Revise the request for proposal.
Correct. Sorry, I said revise the bid, revise the request for proposal so that we have it rebid. Thank you. We did a surplus analysis as well. And this ties into the referendum of September 24th. Basically, a big portion of our capital reserves, about 2/3 of it, is going to fund our share of some improvements in media center and electrical that referendum is about. And so, again, similar to a previous project that we had done where we're asking the voters to approve a referendum where there's actually no tax consequence to it, and we're using capital reserves and the 40% minus costs from the state to fund needed capital improvements. We received the July 25th letter from our auditors, Lurch, Vinci, and Higgins, about upcoming audit, and there's no action to be taken there. And then finally, we did a walkthrough through the updated locker rooms, which was a recently completed project. And we should be grateful to our building and grounds team and administration for really doing a very nice job in completing a project that had been long overdue and put on the back burner and is finally finished.
And I can just echo that the staff and students are very appreciative of the board's decision to move forward with that project. It's a tremendous improvement. So they were very, very, you don't think of people getting excited over a locker room. They were ecstatic. So really.
And a few members of the volleyball team told us who took the tour today about the same thing.
Yes.
Any questions?
Just a point of clarification. So on the strategic plan RFP,
Yes,
did the RFP go out and we got?
yes, we had.
We
had a
received
couple-
four.
Go ahead, Greg.
We received 4 bids. Two of them were considered non-responsive based on some of the things that they were supposed to
Deficiencies.
reply to. One had a timing issue of some licensing thing.
The certificate was, the date was not quite perfect. The bid was due on the 21st, and the date they
Of
were
the
accepted.
certification was several days later.
Right.
And then the one bid that was without any of these questions was, of course, the most expensive bid and substantially more than we had experienced in a prior effort. And so the thought was, do we revise what our request for proposal is and send it out for rebid, or do we look at the one compliant bid and the one questionable after getting some legal input, both of which were similar in expense, and the committee recommended that we just revise our RFP and rebid.
And Bob, just before your question, one of the ways we're looking at, or our administration is looking at revising it for us, is to not go as heavy into some of the post-strategic plan, analysis of what was done, given that we now have experience, setting up those sort of measures and parameters, that we don't need as much as a strategic planner to give us guidance on that. That would lead to fewer hours here at the school. The hope is that will lead us to lower bids from the bidders. But go ahead with your question. I'm sorry.
And then did we happen to receive a bid from the consultant that provided the original plan?
We did not.
Well, was that Judy?
Judy Wilson.
Well, I think she was working for, or I got
No,
the
that's a
different
different
Judy.
one.
Different
Yes,
Judy,
different
okay. No, we did not.
We will see if we can get her interested
Yes.
in
Yeah.
bidding
Yes.
the next time we go
Yeah.
out.
Yeah, I mean, I would think there may be some advantage,
Yes.
to,
Having the
if
same
she is
person.
competitive with the other
Yeah.
bids that are out there, she certainly has some familiarity, and I think we liked the end product and process that we went through.
Okay.
other questions on operations? That's it on committee reports. This is now our first opportunity for public comment. This first public comment period will be limited to agenda items for this meeting only. The second public comment period will be open on any topic. All comments are limited to 5 minutes, and if you wish to address the board, please step up to the podium and state your name and what town you're from, and we will hear you. Seeing no one rushing or even moving slowly to get up towards the podium, I will now close the first opportunity for public comment. Board discussion. I just want to highlight to the board members what Beth Scheiderman told us. That data that they had gathered on other regional one-building districts is in the Personnel Committee folder. What I'd like to do at the next meeting is have a discussion during board discussion on, what other information the board wants, or a discussion of whether or not we want to examine further the question of an overhaul of the administration structure.
I think the Personnel Committee, though, did have a recommendation that they came out of it with, correct? In terms of posting the position?
Yeah, we definitely.
And then
yes,
perhaps at the budget.
Oh, yeah,
during the
no, we're
budget,
posting the
Yes.
position.
Okay.
This
I
just
just wanna
means
make sure it's clear
a
on that.
general discussion on,
Okay.
whether, what we've brushed at looking at a couple times,
Yes,
possible
okay.
combining things, but no, we want to go forward and post the position now. Question?
No, I just didn't hear that in the Personnel
That's
Committee
why I wanted to
report.
clarify it, that, yes. And I think the idea was then, especially too, as we're going through the budget process and planning and having that, a full discussion on that with, all the, not, because what we've done is each time a position has come up, which we had Director of Guidance, we had a Vice Principal position, now a Principal position, and we did with each of those, because the board asked us to take a look at the structure. And with each of those, we had determined, that we did feel the need for replacing that position. We did reduce our vice principals several years ago by one. So perhaps, I think what the committee talked about was that, then when we come to the budget planning time, is that if the board does decide they want to, change the structure, that would be a better time to do that, but that we can move forward with posting the position so that we can fill it in a timely manner.
And I still want to go forward, though, and have a discussion at the next meeting regarding what information, if any, board members want, and whether there's a feeling of the entire board that it needs to be discussed now. Go ahead, Greg.
So I guess I'm a little bit confused. So my understanding of the last time we discussed it, which was a meeting ago, if I recall correctly, was that we as a board agreed that we should have an interim position filled for the time being, and that this information should be gathered, shared with the whole board, and deciding what to do from there. And what I'm hearing instead is that a committee recommended that we post a permanent position, although that was not discussed at the full board. And if I'm incorrect in any of those facts, please correct me.
I'm not sure that that was what we decided. I mean, the question came up about should we look at the changing the administrative structure, but my understanding was not that would hold up posting for the principal's position. I just thought it seemed like a topic that had been looked at before. People suggested looking at it, and maybe we should be looking at it again. I didn't feel that it was holding up anything.
Yeah, I mean, as I recall, we weren't going to move forward with the posting until we did the review. That was my recollection.
So I guess my question is what else, because the main thing that was asked for was looking at what other structures schools have, and if they have some, if there's schools similar to ours that are operating without a principal, then that's something we should look at, and if we did not find that, did not find a reason, then so be it, and we'd move on. So that's where I'm just not sure what other information the board's looking for, because when we were looking at the vice principals, we looked at similar schools to see how many vice principals they had per student, and, our ratio is in line with what other school districts have. Director of Guidance, similarly, we looked at structures of other schools, and principals certainly, for a school of our size, I know that, because we're one building, I guess, that's what brings up this conversation. But our building is larger than many other districts who have multiple buildings combined. So, that's just, it's not something that we found even that schools with one building that are smaller than ours do. So that's where I'm not sure where else the board wants to go from here in terms of what other information you're looking for this particular position. Because if we decided, not to eliminate a vice principal, I guess that's where I'm just having trouble understanding now. We're looking at the principal position.
I mean, I think when we knew the retirement of the vice principal, a comment was made, should we look at the structure? When we had the retirement of the director of guidance, a comment was made, should we look at the structure of guidance? And I don't know that any of us thought that meant we should not move forward with filling those positions until this was reviewed. I just thought it was sort of a comment that's frequently made.
Well, to Dr. Jewett's comment, I don't know that we necessarily need more information, but some of us haven't seen the information that the Personnel Committee actually saw. And I guess I apologize to Peter. It is actually in item 3 of the committee report that it's there. I just didn't catch it. So I certainly would like to review it, and I appreciate the opportunity that you're giving for the whole board to look at it and discuss it at the next meeting.
So would you like us to hold up, waiting until, I guess my only question is I would like to just not put off indefinitely posting for the position, because looking in the fall to fill a position is the prime time, to post for these things. So we'll wait till October 1st so that the board members can review that information. Is
Yeah,
that-
I mean, I would like to, if the rest of the board agrees, make a decision at the first meeting in October on whether we're going to post for the principal position.
Why can't we make that decision now? Is there a reason we can't make it now?
Oh, John, and you were at, obviously,
Welcome
at the
back,
personnel
John.
committee meeting. That's, yes.
So I running late with my night class, yeah.
I mean, several committee members, at least myself, I assume Bob, from his comments, you two, have not reviewed that information, so a committee's apprised of information that we haven't had a time.
So you guys haven't been-
Have not
okay.
even looked at it, so that's one reason. I guess I would ask Dr. Jewett, what is the downside of an October 1st response as opposed to now?
No.
If there's not, then I would ask that we have the opportunity to look at it. If any of us who look at it have questions or would like more information, to forward it to you so that you can respond in advance of that meeting so that we can decide it by that.
I have no problem with that. I mean, that's, a couple of weeks from now, so that's fine.
Consistent with what we thought.
And we'll actually have committee meetings again before that meeting and committee reports, so we can certainly discuss that further.
Okay, we content with that? Okay, so that's what we'll do. We'll make a decision on October 1st on that. Brings us to action items.
Mr. President, I'd like to move items A1 through A7.
Thank you, Mr. Morrison. Do I have a second? Thank you, Dr. Shabilsky. Any discussion on resolutions A1 through A7? Mr. Stiles, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Mr. Hague?
Yes.
Mr. Hunsinger?
Yes.
Mr. Martins?
Yes.
Mr. Morrison?
Yes.
Mrs. Ober?
Yes.
Dr. Shabilsky?
Yes.
And Mr. Fallon?
Yes.
Motion's
Do I
carried.
get the vote too?
Oh, I'm sorry. And
Yeah,
Mr. Fahey?
Apparently not.
Forgotten but
That's what
not
happens when you're
gone,
late,
right?
Yeah.
No voting. All right.
Mr. President, I'd like to move items A8 through A9.
Thank you, Mr. Morrison. Was that a second? Dr. Shabilsky?
Keep track
Thank you.
this time.
Dr. Shabilsky. Anybody besides John have, no, does anybody have comments on resolutions A8 and A9? Questions? Hearing none, can we have a roll call vote, including Mr. Fahey? Mr. Stiles?
Giving up Bruce, though. Bruce didn't get nothing. Mr. Fahey?
Yes.
Mr. Hayek?
Yes.
Mr. Hunsinger?
Yes.
Mr. Morrison?
Yes.
Mrs. Ober?
Yes.
Dr. Shabilsky?
Yes.
And Mr. Fallon?
Yes.
Motion's carried.
Mr. President, I'd like to move items C1 through C25.
Thank you, Mr. Morrison. Do I have a second?
Second. And I assume C8
Yes,
Modified.
modified to the
Modified C8.
September 30th start date. Thank you, Mr. Martins, for the second. Any discussion on resolutions C1 through C25? C8 has changed. Could we have a roll call vote, Mr. Stiles?
Mr. Fahey?
Yes.
Mr. Hayek?
Yes.
Mr. Hunsinger?
Yes.
Mr. Martins?
Yes.
Mr. Morrison?
Yes.
Mrs. Ober?
Yes.
Dr. Shabilsky?
Yes.
And Mr. Fallon?
Yes.
Motion's carried.
Mr. President, I'd like to move items D1 through D13.
Second.
With the change of D1 to adding one check for $1,950.
Yes.
that
Don't ask me to do the
Business
math.
Administrator told us about. Thank you, Mr. Morrison. Thank you, Dr. Shabilsky, for seconding it. Any discussion on resolutions D1 through D13? Hearing none, could we have a roll call vote? Mr. Stiles?
Mr. Fahey?
Yes.
Mr. Hayek?
Yes.
Mr. Hunsinger?
Yes.
Mr. Martins?
Yes.
Mr. Morrison?
Abstain on D2, yes on everything else.
Okay, Mrs. Ober?
Abstain on D2 and yes on everything else.
Dr. Shabilsky?
Yes.
And Mr. Fallon?
Yes.
Motion's carried.
Mr. Fallon,
Yes.
Yes. Would you like?
would you like to review D2?
Oh, yeah. Thanks, Bob.
Thank you, Bob.
For those of you going on the New Jersey School Board's trip, you got to abstain from your own travel. Thanks for bringing that up.
Thank you, Bob. Yes, I will abstain on the portion of D2 dealing with reimbursement for the travel to the workshop, and yes on everything else. For saving me from an ethics class.
Thanks.
Mr. President, I'd like to move items D14 and D15.
Thank you, Mr. Morrison. Somebody?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Martins. Any discussion on resolutions D14 and D15? Do we have a roll call vote, please, Mr. Stiles?
Mr. Fahey?
Yes.
Mr. Hayek?
Yes.
Mr. Hunsinger?
Yes.
Mr. Morrison?
Yes.
Mrs. Ober?
Yes.
Dr. Shabilsky?
Yes.
And Mr. Fallon?
Yes, please.
Motion's carried.
Thank you. This brings us to the second opportunity for public comment, which is not limited to agenda items. If anyone would like to address the board, please step forward to the podium and state your name and the town that you're from.
They all just wanted to join us here tonight. They've heard that this is the
Thank-
place
thank
to be
you.
on a Tuesday
Thank
night.
you for coming, even if you
Riveting.
haven't addressed us. This is our biggest crowd since the Fun Home. I will now close the second opportunity for public comment. Board members, other business? Dr. Shabilsky.
I would like to ask the board if we could take a moment of silence for the passing of Len Vysotsky. He's a longstanding Warren Township community member. He actually founded the police force in Warren in '72 and was the first police chief. He was buried today, survived by his wife Lorraine, both of whom were personal friends of my wife and I, and has served our community in so many volunteer perspectives over nearly a quarter of a century. And so I'd ask everyone if we could have just a moment of silence on the family's behalf.
Thank you, Dr. Shabilsky, and the rest of the board. And I was at the wake for Len last night and spoke with his wife. And although Len had been sick for a while, it's still a tremendous loss. And He really was a towering figure in our town as our very first police chief when the Warren Township Police Department was formed back in 1972.
Yes.
Mr. Morris?
I guess while we're on the topic, I'd like to request a moment of silence for Calvin Davis. Calvin passed away about 10 days ago. His service was just this past Monday. He was a graduate of the school, class of 2017. And he was a triple threat from the standpoint that he played football, was a wrestler, and was extremely active in the music program as a drummer. A very talented young man, just a huge personality, and it was just very devastating to hear that a young man with such talent and promise was taken away from us so early. And I know that he still has siblings here at the school, and obviously his mother, Letitia's been very active here, and so my condolences, and I'm sure you share in our condolences to Letitia and her family in the passing of Calvin. So a moment of silence, please.
And I'll add just before the moment of silence that Dr. Jewett and I were both at the services yesterday and met many other staff members from Watchung Hills that Calvin had impressed very greatly in his short life, and he was beloved by many and many people in our community, and it's a tremendous loss that his dying so quickly, so young and so unexpectedly. So I'll join in asking for that moment of silence. Thank you. Is there any other business from board members?
I have two other items.
Go ahead, Mr. Forrester.
Just one, any update on consolidation discussions or shared services discussions with our sending districts?
The Warren Township president has reached out to me. I'm trying to get in touch with the new Watchung Board of Education president to set up a meeting on that subject, and hopefully we're going to have it before our October 1st meeting.
Don't we have the Long Hill Board of Ed president here?
Yes.
Although would that not,
What?
because of the counties?
I'm waiting for the Watchung person so I can circulate dates to everybody, and because Watchung has been in such flux, but you'll be hearing from me on that day.
And anyone currently on the board have any pull over there?
Not currently.
Who, watching?
As I look directly across the
Your
dais.
second item, Bob?
The second item was related to the climate survey that we've talked about. I know this has kind of gone, I know that we put it on hold, partially related to the contract negotiations. And assuming that that is resolved at some point in time in the near future, wondering kind of where in the planning that is and how that straddles with what we're planning potentially to do with the strategic planning process. So
My understanding was that was something we wanted to tie into the planning for the next, planning for the next plan, because I think that fits really nicely with that. So unless anyone on the board feels strongly the other way, that they want it to be more urgent, I think it folds very nicely into the plan, especially as we evaluate, one of the first things, and Bob, you were at the planning sessions, 5 years ago, where that glaring piece that came out was the trusted adult piece, and so we actually talked about that at our summer leadership retreat of how we can measure whether we make progress on that particular item, and so a survey was obviously, really what we had talked about as one of the best ways to get at that. So I think that would be certainly called for as we look to gather feedback for the next strategic plan.
thank you.
Anything else?
If no other board member has anything, I do want to.
Please, go
Okay,
ahead.
so we had the ad, we had it in Brenda's, say paper, but the tap into, and then on the Echoes, I don't know if we ran the ad yet, but for the board member for Long Hill Township, we're not hearing anything. So Interested? So, technically,
We need
So
to
we
You
gotta
have a
open
board.
seat.
you haven't gotten
Yeah, I
a single
know.
response?
no, and I haven't even heard
And-
anything, and usually I get a call. I
And
don't
we
get
are
anything.
supposed to appoint this
Yeah,
person
yeah.
by October 1st.
October 1st.
Okay.
Yeah, because we only have 65 days by statute. We did check with the county superintendent, and there is no wiggle room on that.
But if nobody wants to do it, you can't appoint somebody, so
He
the
will
county's
appoint,
gotta
they will
wake up.
appoint somebody.
He,
Huh?
his duty is to,
The county superintendent has the authority to appoint a body to that seat.
Yeah,
and
but
he
if the
will do
body
it.
says no, you can't force them.
The county superintendent will find a body.
I mean, really, you're gonna put them in jail because they don't want to serve the
Barry, we don't want to play with this. We
Hey,
need to
it's not
find a
us.
body.
no, it's best if the board makes that decision.
Yeah,
Sure it is.
I'm just saying, it is not in
No, I
our
know, but if
interest to have the
nobody-
county
well-
superintendent appoint a board member.
Okay.
Well, let's beseech
And it's
the
even more
the
interesting in
K-8
our
Board
county.
of Ed to help us try and come up with somebody, because after that, we have to beseech the township
Different
committee.
county
Yeah.
now.
Different
It's
county.
It's a different, I think he still does, but our Somerset County superintendent would be appointing somebody from Morris County
Yeah,
to
it's
serve, so it gets even more
That
interesting.
is strange.
So,
But anyway, so the idea is, if you know
I was
anybody,
asking people at the food truck festival this weekend. No takers.
Maybe we
Tell
can
them
get
we have cake
maybe we
off
can
to
get a
better-
board
I know,
member
I
sticker
tried.
and you could just stick it on somebody at
Yeah.
the football game.
You're it.
Yeah,
No
right.
givebacks.
or hang out at the Dunkin' Donuts there at the Sterling Mall.
Right.
Lots
Okay.
of folks on there.
Sterling
I
family.
think we've done for other business.
Yeah.
Bruce, you want to make a motion?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second? Thank you, Dr. Shabilsky. All in favor?
Aye.
I mean, really, how do you appoint